Hi, I'm Melissa Joseph, and I'm here to give you insights or what I learned after reading the biography of Steve Jobs, written by Walter Isaacson. So, the book is an amazing inside view into the life of one of the greatest businessmen. Steve Jobs was a person who wanted every man, woman, and child to have a computer. So that they could access it as easily as they had access to a book. In fact, he revolutionized the computer industry not once but several times. He revolutionized phones, music industry, and animated movies. He funded Pixar out of his own pocket. But Steve Jobs was as human as everyone else. In fact, Jobs was an abandoned child, and when he asked his parents, his mom and dad, about why his real parents didn't want him, they used to repeat slowly that we specifically picked you out. So abandoned, chosen special is what he considered or regarded himself as. Ironically, later on, he doesn't really deal with his own kid, Lisa, and there was a lot of misunderstanding and friction between his former girlfriend. But mistakes are what make us all human, and Steve Jobs was no exception. Anyways, the thing that struck me most about Steve Jobs was that he was an incredible perfectionist. He was a craftsman, and he wanted that computers were amazing, beautiful, and useful. He believed that computers were at the intersection of technology and liberal arts, because he realized that computers weren't just for the geeks. They were for everyone, and they had to be used by everyone. Design. Now, another thing was that design was at the top of the pyramid, above engineering. He cared, or they spent a lot of time trying to fit in the hardware into the beautifully designed cases that the designers came up with. And this meant that the designers and the engineers had to work together a lot, and there were a few, sometimes it didn't work out, but largely it worked out well. And so what he did was he used to this enabled them to manage or to produce computers that were visually distinct from everything or other computers in the market. And design was paramount, and that extra time and effort and engineering resources to make the beautiful design was completely worth it. The next thing about Steve Jobs was that he cared about his products deeply. He had this intuitive or a gut feeling of what he wanted and what the consumer wanted, and he truly wanted that his products be close to art. Even though a few in the industry believed him, after Macintosh had been there around for almost 10 years, Steve Jobs continued to hold on to his firm belief. Every button, CD tray, line, color, slot, everything was important to him. There is a great passage in the book that says that when he found out that in the Mac, the CD-ROM drive in the Mac was a slot, was a tray instead of a slot, it nearly brought him to tears. And yes, Steve Jobs, the management tactics wasn't that ideal. You couldn't call it ideal. He used to push people, as hard as he could, and he used to make sure to let them know when they didn't perform. So while doing that, people can have one of the two reactions. Either they resent it and they just end up quitting, or they accept the challenge, and try and get something even better. So the first type were the B players, and the second were the A players. So what Steve Jobs did, that he used to filter out the B players and make sure that the A players come up or produce the best work that they could. So this wasn't exactly an ideal tactic, but this is what he did. And Steve Jobs used to make sure that he hired people who had a passion for the product. Because passion is important in life. Once you find that passion, everything becomes worth it. I also liked about how he used to be motivated not by the next thing but by the bigger picture. There is also another instance where he convinces an engineer that 10 seconds off the boot time was really worth it, because across 5 million users, they could save up to 100 lifetimes a year. Another thing was the book was full of references to Steve Jobs, his amazing or his dynamic personality, his reality distortion field. Because in that he believed that he could do anything, and he was so persuasive that he used to convince everyone around him that they could do whatever it was. And I think perhaps that was one of the most bold traits that he had, because it made him believe that something that seemed utterly impossible was to others. He used to persist that something odd could be done. And most interestingly, he used to almost often get it right. And I think this is one of the most defining things of an entrepreneur, because believing in something against all odds, not being afraid to tear down those walls and thinking outside the box, is definitely something that's really needed. Finally, I'd like to say the best quote, or the quote that I like most from the book, is stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you. I'd like to thank Christ University and Ruben sir, my management teacher, for giving this amazing opportunity and this wonderful experience. Thank you.